Hello, lovely listeners. My name is Ariel Schleicher. Thank you and welcome to this artist interview. I'm an American artist based in Prague, Czech Republic. I grew up in Florida, surrounded by its vibrant, saturated sunsets. These bright, bold hues, combined with my father's career as a graphic designer, deeply influenced my early perception of art and design. His work was often striking, attention-grabbing visuals that left my mind curious. From an early age, I was interested in art, even placing second in a local art competition while in grade school. However, as I came of age, my focus shifted more towards academics. It wasn't until I moved to New York that I rediscovered my passion for art, which has since snowballed into the career that I have today. In 2013, I moved to New York City to attend New York University, where I studied marketing but took courses in painting and drawing under Maleka Mogosi. His tutelage expanded my understanding of traditional figurative techniques and introduced me to the power of intellect and narrative in art. I further honed my skills at the New York School of the Arts and the Art Students League under the guidance of Eric Michelson, where I explored the technical approaches and techniques that are the basis of my practical skill today. New York also introduced me to the idea of the commodified image, art that's designed to grab your attention, to be seen and consumed. This was a time where I was working as a digital designer, which taught me how to create visuals with intention, how to research and reference images and symbols meant to communicate, evoke, and resonate within seconds. When I moved to Prague in 2020, I found myself exploring more and more academic themes in classical art. This was also a shift in my environment, which allowed me to take a step back from the high-paced world of New York and delve deeper into my work. It was here that I began to merge the vivid graphic influences of my past with the rich history of classical sculpture, mythology, and storytelling that I'm now surrounded by every day. This blending of worlds from the bright and modern to the ancient and profound has become the foundation of my artistic practice. I'm not sure if it's because of or in spite of a long-standing fascination with classical ideals of beauty that I look for the drama in the poses of classical sculpture and how they inspire figures, models, and representation of today. Even my non-sculpture works aim to bring you in, often with dynamic forms and direct gaze with the viewer. I can recall back to my earliest work regarding classical themes. It was a collection of stickers I released in 2018, which were digital drawings of works in the permanent collection at the Metropolitan Museum in New York. What captivates me about sculptures is their evocative nature. I love when there's a sense of drama in the figures, and I believe there's an innate primal urge to identify things that cause tension and assess whether it's dangerous or not, thereby subconsciously transforming the bystander into a viewer of the work. This love of bold, expressive composition for me extends beyond classical art and into contemporary media, especially fashion. My guilty pleasure is finding inspiration in the editorials of Vogue, Playboy, and Harper's Bazaar. For me, these two influences, classical sculpture and fashion, intersect in a shared language of movement and emotion. Growing up in Florida taught me the dangers of becoming too entrenched in any ideals, reminding me of the importance of being open to change. For me, this openness is not so much about embracing imperfection as it is about allowing for play and removing the pressure to make some next great art masterpiece, but rather to embrace the transformative potential that exploring can bring to my work. Even the notion of what constitutes play has grown and changed over time for me, whether through experimentation with subject matter or new modes of representation. This mindset has shaped how I approach my work, encouraging me to engage with art as an evolving process that balances play and experimentation with deep concentration and consistency. While my practice embraces exploration, it is guided by a clear intention and a commitment to a cohesive artistic voice. My upbringing instilled in me a respect for the bold and the dynamic, but also a willingness to question, adapt, and let the act of creating lead me to unexpected places. It's because of these lessons that I continue to explore new content and constantly refine the steps within my process. This ultimately drives me to create pieces that reflect wherever I am at that time on the intersecting spectrums of exploration and intention, tradition, and embracing what is new. One of the most profound experiences that has shaped my work was the passing of a dear friend of mine to complications from COVID-19. This friend, a published fiction writer, was not only a collaborator on multiple projects, but was also a vital part of my support system as an emerging artist. She and I met in the Syracuse winter of 2013, and we bonded through my sister and our shared love of Elvis Costello and being the wallflower at the local garage band rock show. Her loss was devastating, and it left me searching for a new way to channel my grief and to create talismans to her memory. The day after her passing, I found myself in Rome, standing in front of the famous Laocoon and his son's sculpture at the Vatican. I was struck by the beauty and the grief embodied in this work. The story of Laocoon and his sons, whose lives were cut short by the gods for opposing the Trojan horse, resonated deeply with me. It felt like a masterclass in encapsulating the randomness and the flippancy of death, how it can appear suddenly and almost without reason. As I stood there, completely filled with sorrow and tears, I was completely unaware that in this moment would be the catalyst for the next big step in my creative journey. By remaining open and allowing myself to embrace that moment, I was led deeper into the investigation of ancient themes. My work continues to be deeply informed by these classical narratives, which I reinterpret through a modern lens. It is my goal that by blending timeless with the contemporary, that I am reflecting not only my personal journey, but also the universal experiences of grief, death, and resilience. My artistic practice draws inspiration from a range of incredible artists. Alice Neel comes to mind, not just because she was an amazing artist who created some of the most revealing portraits of the 20th century, but her story has always felt deeply important to me. She was an artist unburdened by the trends of her time, namely that of abstract expressionism, and remained true to herself, using portraiture to catalog the Harlem neighborhood where she lived. Her later use of non-traditional skin tones and her challenges to the notion of what is a completed work are certainly what I find to be the most interesting about her. I was lucky enough to see the unfinished show at the Metropolitan Museum in New York in 2016, and her work in that show imprinted upon me. It continues to be the barometer I keep in the back of my mind, measuring the completeness of all of my work. Toyin Ojin Odatola is a master mark maker. Her ability to create narrative is a true testament to her craft, but what I find is that there's so much for me to learn about my own art through her technical mastery. There's just something so special about seeing her work in person. When I saw her solo exhibition at the Whitney Museum in New York City, I remember wanting to be so physically close to these monumental works just to see how she covered its every inch. Her intricate, layered approach pushes me to find new ways to add dynamicism to my surfaces. David Hockney has a wonderful mind. His ability to translate the world into simplified yet engaging motifs, especially in his explorations around water, is nothing short of amazing. I keep his biography in my studio as a reference and as a reminder to step back, explore, and sketch in preparation for larger, more significant pieces. I find that his iPad work and use of technology in his practice offer a bold, refreshing take in a discourse that often dismisses new tools and traditional art forms. I find his forward-thinking approach in this regard incredibly inspiring. Last, but absolutely not least, is the Portuguese artist Paula Rego, who sadly passed away in 2022. What does one actually say about Paula Rego's work? At first, it's jarring. Shocking even, in ways that demand your attention and force you to stop and stare at hard truths. Her ability to create sympathy for her subjects while simultaneously unsettling the viewer is something I've always admired. I remember traveling to Cascais, Portugal, and when we passed by her museum there, I started to talk with our tour guide about her work, and he told me that he found it to be borderline revolting. I loved that. Through her narrative strength, she transferred the emotional weight of what she found to be revolting, i.e., women's inability to a safe and medical abortion, and was able to break through and influence the average person. Right now, I'm deeply focused on furthering my classical sculpture series, Antiquity Today. I was recently working on a piece for an exhibition this June in Barcelona, and during that process, I feel like I've had another major breakthrough in defining the visual codes for this series. This has got me excited and waking up early to go to the studio to make new paintings that push these motifs even further. I'm currently working on a new collection of 10 paintings that reflect this next step in my creative journey. As I mentioned before, the catalyst for this series was the painting of Lao Kun, but now, being even further removed from the raw emotions that originally brought me to this work, I find myself reintroducing an element of play. This renewed sense of exploration allows me to combine the serious gravitas of these sculptural themes with what I refer to as whimsy in the backgrounds. My goal is that these whimsical elements bring a distinctly contemporary feeling to these ancient stories. I'm excited to continue experimenting within this paradigm, finding new ways to balance the levity of play with the weight of the narratives, and to see how this balance evolves as the series progresses. I'm also working on a series of paintings on paper that capture the Florida landscapes. My brother, who is a landscape photographer, and I are collaborating on this project, and I feel incredibly grateful to have the opportunity to work with him. For me, this series serves as a reminder that art is so much about how it makes us feel, and sometimes we just want to feel good. A big challenge of being an artist is juggling active creativity while wearing all the hats necessary to run a successful small business. While the time I get to pursue art through painting is the reward that drives me, it's really only one part of the equation. Behind the scenes, there's the nitty-gritty work of accounting, marketing, and management, the less glamorous aspects that come with being your own boss. At one point, I worried if it had been a mistake to study business instead of fully diving into art. But now I'm grateful for the foundation it gave me. Many of the skills I learned in business school, from financial planning to organization, are the tools I rely on every day as an artist. They help me approach my practice with a sense of structure and professionalism. Unlike just being a small business owner, however, there's one additional challenge that I think is unique to any creative field, and that's imposter syndrome. It's that ever-present shadow of doubt that plagues so many of us. It's the balancing of being vulnerable and the confidence needed to share something so deeply personal. But if you can manage to build a support system that helps you navigate the practicalities of running a business and deal with the emotional hurdles that come with it, then there's really no stopping even the most underground of emerging artists from finding their own unique version of success. The advice that I would give to any young artists, myself included, is to not force the weight of the world on your shoulders. Not every work needs to be a masterpiece. I spent so much time worrying about potential pitfalls and the fear of making a mistake instead of just doing it. Seneca famously said, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." And for me, when starting out, that was absolutely the case. As I've grown, I've realized the importance of practicing mindfulness and keeping those doubts at bay. Now, as I enter my 30s, I feel like I'm truly hitting my stride. I'm learning to trust myself and not fear or let imagined obstacles hold me back from reaching my full potential. This shift in mindset has truly been transformative, and I would tell my younger self to focus on that, to embrace the process, take things one step at a time, and have faith in the journey and in yourself. I often incorporate what could be considered unconventional techniques into my oil paintings. With my background in tech, I'm always exploring new ways to improve my work using modern tools. I frequently use projectors, Photoshop, the internet, or AI to alter, enhance, research, or brainstorm ideas for new pieces. These tools allow me to take the act of making and add to it the act of learning. It allows discovery of different perspectives or iterations I might not have otherwise considered. The goal is to have a result that feels recognizable and comfortably familiar, but is distinctly me. This approach endues my work with an undeniable sense of individuality and a connection to me as the artist. By merging traditional methods with innovative techniques, I create pieces that take aim at the gap between what is old and what is new to achieve something fresh and has ubiquitous quality, yet is uniquely its own. Personally, I'm the type of person that can get excited about listening to music or enjoying the silence. It really depends on the complexity of the task at hand. Much like the phenomenon of turning down the radio when driving and searching for a turn, I need near silence to think most clearly. For example, as I write my responses to this interview, I realize I've paused my jazz rap playlist. But it doesn't always have to be silent. In my studio, I have a small Marshall speaker that I love to turn up on sunny days, filling the space with bangers like Mr. Blue Sky by ELO or Solar Power by Lorde. Because music is another form of art, it has the ability to strongly sway and energize my mood. Beyond music, I love listening to public radio stations like KEXP from Seattle, WQXR Classical in New York, podcasts, and audiobooks. The best recent audiobook I've listened to was The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexandre Dumas, for free on YouTube as it is in the public domain. Don't sleep on works in the public domain. There's some really great classics in there. The best reaction to my artwork happened recently during an open studio event in Prague. A visitor came in and saw a quick painting that I had done of a nude model. The model, a woman, is seated backwards on a chair with her legs open. The visitor, a man, approached me and told me that the woman in the painting looked remarkably like his mother. He even showed me a photo and we had a pretty good laugh about the uncanny resemblance. What made the moment truly profound, though, was the conversation that followed. We began discussing the semantic differences between being nude and naked. Nude, as we agreed, embodies pride and a sense of being truly seen, while naked can represent vulnerability or even shame. Think Adam and Eve being cast out of Eden. For me, that exchange captured the essence of what art can do. It can start a dialogue. It bridges the gap between personal experience and universal ideas, creating opportunities for connection and reflection. That moment has really stayed with me. I hope my artwork sparks a sense of curiosity. I aim to create paintings so dynamic that the viewer finds themselves wondering about the subject, diving into a wormhole of discovery, and learning something they might not have known before. As someone who loves to look up the unknown the moment it arises, I find immense joy in the act of exploring and uncovering knowledge. It's one of the great privileges of being alive and connected in the world today, and I feel incredibly grateful for that. In my own way, I hope to pass that sense of curiosity on to others. If my work can inspire someone to ask questions, seek out a story, or connect with history in a fresh and meaningful way, then I feel like I've succeeded in creating something worthwhile. Before I end and plug some of my upcoming shows, I wanted to thank Stan and the Art by Artists team for letting me give this context and share with you all my journey thus far. You can see my work in person January 13th to the 31st, 2025 in Madrid. My works will be part of the Et There exhibition at the Van Gogh Gallery. In Paris on May 23rd to the 25th, my works will be on display at Art World Paris. In Barcelona on June 13th to the 16th, a recent painting of mine will hang at the European Museum of Modern Art. In Miami, you can see my work as part of the Red Dot Art Fair in December 2025, or really anytime in Prague at my studio. Follow me on Instagram to get in touch. Thank you all, and if you like this, please don't forget to like and subscribe. Cheers!